we are, and this is Cristina Alvarado with me.
Hello to everyone.
How are you today?
Thank you, Angie, for having me here with you in Action with Angie. It's a pleasure to talk to you and to everyone who's watching us today.
Thank you very much for being here. Talk to me about this journey with embracing your heritage in El Salvador for the women and giving them the tools for leadership.
Well, being a woman, in the society, and knowing sometimes that we lack the identity that we need to become leaders in our community and empower others. I've took this journey to help other women. We as women have a lot of influence in our children and in society. We like to talk a lot, so we can use that as a tool to connect, to help others develop and be raised up and discover who they are and become models for others, to inspire others into becoming who they really were meant to be and work together to make a better society every day.
When you bring a woman to this, knowing that this has been going on since 2003, bringing over women from El Salvador, from how many places? 14 departments?
Exactly.
14 departments. So you have many people there going and now becoming leaders. Have you had a specific or something that you remember the most from one of them that you want to share?
Well, actually, because I'm always moving in my country, trying to help others, doing it in a way just to touch their hearts. I found women who've been to my conferences and who've reached out to me and said, I'm now doing this and that. I have become a leader in my society. I started to believe in who I am and what I had inside of me, and it's already been used to serve the society. So I have many stories of women like this. Everything I've done through the years has now a name and a place that are actually making a difference in society, and so I can bear the fruit now and say it was worth doing it, and it's just an amazing feeling to help others to become who they are meant to be.
And we have to also talk about how women work in the family, for example. And one of the things has a lot to do with, specifically in Latin America, where we're from, and many of you are from, how many women stay home and have that culture of men goes to work, women, which is something that has been changing, but not as at its full capacity yet. How do you feel now seeing people, in this case women, that are becoming leaders? Does this also bring like kind of a stigma within their families, their husbands? Like, are they maybe not really agreeing with this?
One of the things I've always done is try to see men and women as a team. I never try to compete. So whenever I teach a woman or help a woman realize who she is, I always tell her to do this in accordance with the husband as a team when they're married. Because some women are, head of family, and they're already working, and making the living for their house. But so it's been amazing challenge to teach women to understand that being married, it's not about losing yourself, and being a leader is not about competing with your husband, but making you a team with him. And the power of working together, it's you can reach more people.
Yes.
So it's been great because men have been actually cooperating with me so that their wives and daughters can really know who they are and grow and express themselves and become leaders. So it's been an interesting experience, even though I live in a country where the machismo is in Central America. El Salvador is one of the most machistas countries,
yeah. In the Dominican Republic, and I can say that too, being Dominican too. I grew up like learning that kind of culture as well.
Exactly.
And even though now with this new mentality that we have, the empowerment of women too, it has been a little bit changing.
Yeah.
But the mindset is not changing though.
But what is it is when you talk about women in leadership and you mix it up with being a team with the male figure, then it's easier, to raise up these women, because men don't feel threatened by the leadership of women. So that ingredient made it a real difference in my country.
That's good. Now, talking about also the fact that you have been empowering, I will say, in a way, because when you become a leader, you have some sort of power. Actually, you have a spiritual power too within yourself, so you can believe in yourself, number one. So you can actually also, as a leader, share that power.
Exactly.
Now, as a mom,
I've done the same.
As a mom, though, you are a mom, right? Yeah. So you have that power to raise your children in a way that they feel they have self-esteem, that they have power themselves.
It is interesting, because of how society works in our countries, empowering your kids sometimes can become they can become a target for when they're in school. Mm-hmm. For example, I taught my kids to speak out. Even to me, I remember the first time I sat with them when they were in between 9 and 7 years old, because I have 3 kids, and I sat with them and I told them that they had the freedom to tell me. I wanted to hear from them that how they saw me as a mom and in which areas they thought I needed to improve myself. Yes. And it was interesting, because I thought, when I was doing this exercise with them for the first time, I actually thought they were just going to say, "Mom, you're just the greatest," but it was not that. And I let them become who they are and what they were meant to be. So when they were in class at school, they felt this freedom, yes, to speak out. But it was not well received. But it's interesting now, they're in between 24 and 21, and they're so independent. They're driven, to do great things for other people, and it's just, for me, has been a blessing to be their mom and just teach them to believe in who they are and what they carry inside of them. And as you said, we are spiritual as well, so I believe God is a big part of this. Yes. And I have that ingredient in my life and in my kids, and it's just been amazing to see them grow and become who they are now, and what they are also doing with their lives to help others.
Now, when it comes to these women that are in El Salvador, do you believe they're doing the same thing with their kids there, or is it becoming difficult for them to do that?
One of the things we have a challenge in, nowadays, is that women at work also have less time to spend with their children and with families. So we need to make it a priority in our agenda. I remember I had a full agenda all year long, but I remember taking, that paper agenda and just writing on every other Saturday, this day is for my family. This is my appointment for the day, right? So whenever someone will call and ask for me to go somewhere and give a conference, I will look at my agenda and say, okay, I have an appointment with my children, with my family. So in that way, I was able to have a balance between work and family, and really pour myself into my family and build them up, because I believe that is something we must not lose sight of. We need to build our children into good people for society. We need to embrace them and give them everything we have. I mean, we are who they learn from. They mostly learn from what they see you doing than what they hear you saying. So yes, it is important to spend quality time with them and invest in their hearts and in that person that they are inside of them.
And one of the reasons why I'm touching this topic has to do with the fact that in El Salvador, one of the main problems, social issues, has to do with gang violence. And the main gang there is La Mara. It's called La Mara, or MS-13 is called here, MS-18 too. Gang violence here in the United States has also been a problem for years. One of the reasons, of course, because many of the gangs has been born here. For example, MS-13 was born in California, Los Angeles, specifically in Koreatown. And it was in the 80s, you know, when there was a lot of guerrillas in El Salvador, a lot of political issues, a lot of also not only the political issue itself, but what was brought from it. A lot of corruption, which is something that unfortunately we have been building up for years in Latin America.
Exactly.
Now, when it comes to also social movement, you and your husband, Josué Alvarado, are doing something amazing for the people and specifically for the young kids in El Salvador. And this is called
Trabajemos por la Paz, or Working for Peace.
Working for Peace. And I want you to share what's the promising purpose of Working for Peace?
We work in rehabilitating these kids who were exposed to violence and inserting back into society. So there is a whole team that works with these young kids, and so far we have rehabilitated 650 young adults who are now working and making, you know, an honest living and impacting their family and their kids as well. So it was a challenge when Josué saw like firsthand this violent scene when one of his friends' children was killed by a gang member, and his heart was moved, and he knew that even though he had been doing something for El Salvador, creating jobs and in a culture that it was different from what we have in El Salvador, he knew back then in 2009 that he had to do more. And that's how he founded Working for Peace and invested a lot of money to work with these young groups and show them that if we gave them an opportunity, they could have a different life. If you speak to some of these young men who live in these areas where are violented constantly, you would hear that they have an expectancy of living until 18 years old. And
until 18 years old.
Yeah.
So the kids in El Salvador, most of them, Cristina is telling me right here that they have an expectancy of living until they're 18. But why though?
Because if they live in these areas with a lot of violence, they know they have to be part of a gang or be killed. So the choices are really low for them, and when they get involved into a gang, they know that they risk, you know, losing their lives every single day.
Yes.
And so it is interesting when you show them that we really care for them, that most of them don't want to be a part of a gang, but what they need is an opportunity and someone to believe in them and to extend a hand. We don't give anything for free. What we're giving is just the opportunity for them to open up their hearts and enter into this process of rehabilitating themselves to become a good member of society. And so they have to work hard. But it's amazing how many of them want this help.
Yes.
And they're just crying out for someone to look at them and see them as a person and tell them, I believe in you and I can help you get out of that.
I believe it's something that has to do with the lack of mentorship too.
I believe so. I mean, we've experienced a lot of families being broken up because of the situations and the crisis in El Salvador, who migrated.
Economic crisis
that migrated to the United States.
Yes.
So the kids were left behind, and sometimes they didn't have someone to mentor them, to take care of them, to give them.
I believe in you.
Exactly.
I believe in you.
Exactly.
And Working for Peace has that purpose.
And
to
now,
mentor those kids.
Yes.
And 650 kids now, young adults, have been rescued, I would say, from this unfortunate situation of living in which they are now part of the gangs, and they have...
And these kids have never committed a crime.
Okay.
So they were part of a gang, but were still clean.
Yes.
And they were just looking for a way out. And thanks to Working for Peace, they found it.
So there's a specific criteria to follow when it comes to rescue these kids?
What is it is we believe in the law and we want to abide by the law. So if someone has committed a crime, they would need to answer to
the law.
To the law. So we don't want to step over that.
So these kids that are being rescued in this case are kids that have been part of the gangs but yet have not committed any crime. Okay. Now, working for peace is just one of the many things that Josue Alvarado is doing for El Salvador. Can you talk to me about your husband?
Oh yes, I can tell you a lot about my husband. I'm really proud to be his wife.
Who is Josue Alvarado?
Josue Alvarado is a man who had to migrate to the United States 32 years ago because of the civil war that we had back then. There was 2 attempts of murder for his, to him. So he was basically forced to leave the nation and to seek a place where he could find opportunities to start, from zero again. So he came to Maryland and started his own company from zero. The way he tells the story, because I didn't know him back then, so he grabbed a carton box and he put 3 products in it: flour to make tortillas and plantains, because we Salvadorians like that.
Okay.
So he went to all these apartments where Salvadorians lived and knocked on every door offering these 3 products. He had a dream to become a businessman and to create a new life for the family. So people would sometimes make fun of him, saying, you need to find a part-time job at least.
A better job, yeah.
A part-time, they would say, like at least to make ends meet, to have food on the table. But he believed in his dream. So now you might know him around the area, basically Maryland, the tri-state area, through Rio Grande Company, which is a company that distributes us this nostalgic food in 29. But he worked hard and from zero and built all this through effort, and resilience. And now, because of everything he went through and because of his background, how his father started working when he was 8, because he became an orphan at 8 years old and had to work himself, to provide for him and his siblings. So he knew that if you work hard and were honest, you will bear fruit, good fruit. So after coming here and building his company, he asked himself, how can I give back to El Salvador what Salvadorian people have done for me in the United States, believing in my products and buying them? So he decided to start a company of manufacturing in El Salvador. He was no longer going to be just a distributor, but he was going to make some of the products, which is mainly food. So, but one of the reasons was that he wanted to create a different kind of jobs for the people in El Salvador, where humans were going to be valued by the capacity, by the resilience and the attitude towards work, rather than just by a last name or because I know a friend and social status that connects me and allows me to rise up,
Yeah.
And so he brought this company to El Salvador, and right now we have more than 1,000 people working at the companies in El Salvador. But one of the things that makes me feel proud of my husband is the way he values people and how he gives them real opportunities. There's a story about this girl. She became pregnant when she was a teenager, and she couldn't go to school anymore because she had to provide for her child. So she went to apply for a job at Rio Grande Exports in El Salvador, and all she could do was do tortillas. So she applied to a position to make tortillas. But she was so smart, so brilliant. And in the company, it doesn't matter where you come from or who you are, if you have the attitude and the capacity
the drive
to grow, and you put yourself out there, you will be noticed and you will be allowed to grow, no matter if you have a degree, you know, that will back you up.
Yes.
So now she is a manager of one of the managers of the company, in charge of all the shipping to the countries that the food goes to, including United States, Canada, Italy, and Australia. So it's been just, you know, amazing to see her grow and become this woman that she thought had no opportunity in El Salvador, but went to the right place and to the right people who were able to believe in her and let her grow and develop.
What are you expecting from the people in El Salvador with this organization that you have?
The new one?
With your husband, Josue, and also with the leadership. What specifically is the goal of these two social movements that you guys have been building up over the years? Now, since 2003, for empowering women, and since 2009, embracing and giving power, also bringing peace.
What we want to achieve is for Salvadorians to believe in themselves again, to have hope, to know that we can create opportunities, that we can change the history of our nation, that if the good people that are most of us, you know, rise up and start doing something for somebody else, we can change the condition and the crisis that we live in right now. So we want just people to know that there are many good ones out there trying to make a difference. But we need to step up, we need to rise up, we need to start to believe again. One thing we cannot allow for us to believe is that everything is lost. We cannot lose hope. There are nations in the world who have been in worse conditions than ours and have risen up from them and have made a whole new country for their society. So we want to just give this hope to the people and empower them to become the better self that they can be.
Embracing for better and future generations.
Exactly.
With the strongest minds.
Exactly.
Right? Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias a ti.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for being there. This was Action with Anyi.